All right, we are live on the Extraordinary Sports YouTube channel as well as podcasts. I am chilling with a special guest. The man is a ridiculously accomplished NFL quarterback as well as in the CFL, none other than Jeff Garcia. Jeff, thank you so much for being with me this early afternoon. How we doing?
Hey, doing great, Alex. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Absolutely. So obviously your accolades are incredible. Grey Cup winner, 4-time CFL All-Star, 4-time NFL Pro Bowler, and the list goes on of achievements. But I want to take it back to your childhood. Grew up just an hour or so away south of San Jose in Gilroy, California, where you grew up with your dad and mother, obviously, your dad being a football coach. So I wanted to ask, how much did growing up in that farm-like environment contribute to not only the person you are, but the type of athlete you were over the years?
Well, I don't think you as a kid realize it when you're going through it because you want to be in town, you want to be with your buddies, you want to be playing in the streets and at the parks and all those things instead of being stuck on the farm, doing chores, feeding the cows, changing pipes, driving tractor. But looking back, it was a blessed life, a blessed way of growing up, an understanding of some rules and some standards to live by, some work ethic, some drive, some commitment in those sort of ways that was instilled by my dad and his background. I mean, he came from an immigrant family. His parents immigrated from Mexico, my grandparents, and my dad was born in California but grew up working in the field and in the agriculture. And I think just that way of life and me seeing that and being around my grandmother and seeing her work and just raise and crops and all those things, it instilled a certain work ethic, a certain dedication inside of me and a certain understanding of, there are certain commitments that I had to and take care of before I could go out and play in the parks, play in the streets with my buddies. And, it's one of those things that I think instilled a certain drive and commitment within myself.
And going along those lines of learning those early disciplines in life, of course, growing up on the sideline with your father coaching at the junior college level as a head football coach. And that's got to be a very interesting lens being, well before your years in pads. So how much did that sense of gratitude, having those moments with your dad early on the sideline as just an onlooker, contribute to the type of gratitude you had for playing the game that once it was your turn?
Well, it meant everything. I wouldn't have ever been the player that I turned out to be without growing up in that type of situation, having those type of experiences, being able to basically be raised on the football field. I mean, I remember my mom dropping my brother and I off at my dad's practices out at the junior college, and it was the football players, the 19, 20-year-old JC players that were our babysitters out there on the field and just being around it.
Yeah.
Watching film with my dad. I mean, growing up in the country, this is long before cable and direct TV and all those things.
Right.
We got 2 channels with fake antennas on top of the TV, and my dad would bring home the old projector and put the film up on the wall, and he'd be scouting the next opponent. He'd be talking about defenses and coverages and just different things that were football related, and I would sit there and just watch with him and then absorb it all, soak it all in, and just listen to him talk. And shoot, probably before I was 7, 8 years old, I knew what cover 3 was. I knew what cover 2 was. I knew what things were just because I was growing up around it and listening to him. And my dad had a way of just inspiring people. I mean, he was such a great motivator, he had such great charisma and just drive and excitement and emotion that he brought to the field. And to be able to witness that and see that and how it really brought more out of the young players that he was coaching and really inspired them to reach above and beyond what they were ever thought that they were capable of doing, I think really projects in how I played the game. I don't think people ever realized or wanted to give me credit in the sense of, oh, this guy's a future NFL player. And I didn't even think I was a future NFL player, but I just kept driving and kept battling and kept motivating myself and kept overcoming the obstacles and the adversity and those sort of things. And so much of that was just instilled in me as a child, just growing up around the game, around my dad, around his coaching staff, around the players, and idolizing those guys. I remember being 4, 5, 6, 7 years old and wanting to be those guys. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to play football for my dad at Gavilan Junior College. I mean, that was what I was aspiring to do as a young kid. And, obviously it led to bigger and better things after that.
It's phenomenal. And you're such an inspiration yourself. I saw a very lengthy speech you gave to your former Canadian football family up there. And it was inspirational to say the least. And one of the things you alluded to was that you were a huge visionary, someone that just would not be denied success. And your path is so unique and can be an inspiration for so many. But I know you just kind of alluded to it, that you maybe never thought the NFL was on the menu, but on some level, Beach, you were at the quarterback position, undersized. You're obviously a big man, but at the football position, quarterback 6'1" is not 6'4", 6'5" prototypical. But you no one measured heart, and they don't do that enough in my opinion, at the scout, even at the professional level, looking at the combine, because we got mental just as much as physical in sports. Did you make decisions mentally early on in your football career that you were not going to be denied?
I think that that was my advantage. That was my advantage growing up. I may not have been as physically blessed as other players on the field, especially as a kid. I wasn't always the best athlete. I was a good athlete, but I wasn't the best athlete. But mentally, I was just ahead of the game. And the heart, the ability to just battle and emotionally and mentally will my way was just something, again, growing up around it, growing up and listening to my dad's halftime or pregame speeches and how he just got guys so excited and riled up, and kind of my motivation and just what was really just burning deep inside of me. And you talk about what fuels the fire. And I think, after I was able to accomplish certain things at the high school and the junior college level and to get that scholarship on to San Jose State, there was a sense of pride that I carried with me to just want to prove people wrong, to always just want to battle and take on the next person that was saying that I couldn't do something, that I couldn't achieve, and just really put that into my efforts to being the best on the field on that day. And not just on game day, but every day on the practice field. I think there was a sense of pride really that came early on in my life. My dad took a break away from the coaching at the junior college level to open up an athletic club in our hometown of Gilroy. And while he was doing that, he was able to coach my Pop Warner football teams and my baseball teams and that sort of thing. Well, with my dad there was always a sense that I could not ever relax. I always had to be a hustler. I always had to be first. Right. I always had to, show that I was just battling. And I try to tell that to my own kids today. It's like, hey, don't be over there goofing off, man. Your dad's out here wasting his time, putting his time in trying to coach you. I expect you to be the front runner. I expect you to be to demonstrate how things are supposed to be done, because that's a sense of pride that you should have, because your father is out there taking his time, putting his time in to help you grow as not only a player, but as a person. I think I had that early on. And so I always was just trying to battle and demonstrate to him that, hey, I could be the best. I could do whatever he was asking me to do and then some, and not want to disappoint him in that sort of way, not being a screw off or a screw up, And I think also you have to think about the things that I went through as a child. I lost a brother and I lost a sister at early ages in my life. I lost my best friends, really. And in two separate tragic accidents that were totally preventable in so many ways. And it's unfortunate what we went through as a family, and just see my parents go through that, and the pain and the heartache and just the emotions that went through our family. And my emphasis on myself was to not let them down anymore. I didn't want to break. I don't want to bring them any more disappointment.
Wow.
How could I help put a smile on their face? And I think that was a drive and a motivation for me to just try to be a good kid, try to be a good athlete, try to distract my parents from what they could be thinking about to maybe something more positive. And I think in a lot of ways that was really a motivation for me to just continue to battle and scratch and claw my way to the top at each level to where I'd get another opportunity at the next level. Wow.
That was beautifully said. You're firing me up over here and filling me up with all kinds of emotions. That was some truth. And obviously, going off of that, you played the game with such gratitude and joy and zest. And I wish more guys did at the quarterback position play the game like you did, because when you're sharing joy and exuberance and all of those things on the field and you're the quarterback, you're the leader, I have no doubt in my mind that's infectious from a law of attraction standpoint, from just an energetic standpoint. So for you, I mean, you obviously being the coach's son had that kind of in your makeup all your life, but knowing when you continue to climb at level after level at the quarterback position, did you know how to get the most out of your players? And was each team different? Because obviously you did have a special ability to lead, and you still do.
Well, I think it all was a personal demonstration. It wasn't so much of a rah-rah type of thing. It was really the demand that I put on myself to exceed everybody's expectations and even my own expectations, and just the commitment that I put into it, whether it was in the weight room, in the film room, on the practice field. Everything that I did from a motivational standpoint, I expected myself to be the best. I expected to strive for perfection. I think that was infectious in a lot of ways, and I had a very high demand on myself, especially on the practice field, to do everything the way that I was coached and to the level of perfection and expectation that I expected in myself. And I wanted to step in that huddle and command it and show the infection in my voice, just the understanding that I knew what the hell I was doing, and I was going to take you guys in the direction that we needed to go. And I just need you to jump on board. I need you to be along for the ride. I need you to be the teammate that you need to be, and be accountable and raise your own level of expectations. Hey, we're all here from different backgrounds and for different reasons. And some of you are drafted, some of us are not drafted. Hey, but we're here as a team, and we need to unite and bring it together and battle together, man. We're another form of an army going to war. And the only way we're going to win that battle is if we're all in it together. And that was just the motivation and just the attitude that I had. And I played with emotion. I played with excitement. I didn't bottle it up and hold it in, man. You could see my frustration. You could see disappointment when I missed a pass, the expectation to, not make mistakes, to do the things right, the way that I was coached to do them, to not put my team in a bad position or a bad situation. And that was how I played the game, and just wanting to just drive and carry them with me. And that just, again, it comes from an upbringing. It comes from a certain expectation, a certain demand upon myself to just exceed expectations and prove people wrong. And just, that was the fire. That was the fire that fueled the desire to just to be the best that I can be. And along that same path, bring everybody with me.
I'm fired up, ready to run some routes for you right now. I'll tell you that much.
Sounds good, man.
Well, so obviously looking at, I don't want to say there's just two types of athletes, process-based and outcome-based, but I've heard of different, and obviously, not going too deep into it, but you're someone that loved, like you've already mentioned, the film room, gym time, practice, just as much as game day. And I want to see if we can try and motivate the millennial generation and younger, which I'm in, because obviously it's an instant gratification world. We're only seeing the athletes on Sunday. We're only seeing the actors at the award shows. We're not seeing the day in, day out work that a craft, to be a true master craftsman, demands. Can you talk a little bit about how, because again, such a vicious work ethic you had in your career, any tips of the trade to modern day athletes and really trying to love every aspect of the game, not just game day?
Yeah, first of all, I was a gym rat. I mean, I wasn't always physically strong, but I was always active and athletic. Hey, playing basketball, playing baseball, playing soccer, football, one sport to the next. Like I said earlier, my dad opened up an athletic club. They had a racquetball courts and a basketball gym in there and weight room. And I lived at the place, and when I was old enough, I started working at the place. But
awesome.
That was just how I lived my life. I loved being around sports. Whatever sport was in season, I was playing that. And level on the mental preparation, in order to be productive on the field, in order to play the game without thinking, to just react and respond, and obviously to do it in a positive way, to make the right decisions in a matter of seconds, you have to prepare yourself mentally. You have to know your game plan. You have to understand what you're trying to put together from an offensive strategy and what defenses are trying to do in order to stop you.
Right.
And how do you study that? And how do you prepare yourself for that to where it just becomes reactive? It becomes second nature. It becomes natural to where you're not thinking about it. I think too many guys who aren't consistent at the quarterback position find themselves thinking too much on the field. And when you think, you're a half second behind in your decision making, and that's enough to make negative or mental errors. And so from that standpoint, going into a week in my preparation, starting on Monday, preparing for that upcoming opponent in the film room, studying what we're planning on doing from an organizational standpoint in our philosophy offensively, and what defenses we're going to face and what their scheme is and how we're going to combat that. And just understanding that as we progress through the week was so important in my ability to be successful on Sunday. And if you didn't put the time and effort into it, if you just think you can show up because you're a good enough athlete to make plays, well, once you get to the NFL level, especially, that's not gonna work for you. We've seen quarterbacks, we've seen great athletes, we've seen guys like a Johnny Manziel, who was a terrific college football player,
right?
But he played a freelance style of football. He didn't play under any sort of structure. It didn't look like he really understood what he needed to do from a decision-making standpoint. And when all of a sudden you put him into structure and you force him to learn a system and study an opponent, he didn't know how to do it, didn't know how to commit himself to it, didn't know how to adapt to it.
Right.
And he found himself out of the league before you knew it. And so those are some of the differences in the detail, the attention to detail that was always stressed by my quarterback coaches. The attention to detail was so important going into the week's worth of work. And unless you have it down every single day in practice, you're not going to be able to do it come Sunday. And that was really the focus. The importance of my approach week in and week out was to make sure that on that practice day, I went out there and I knew what the hell I was doing, and I practiced with a lot of intensity. I practiced with a lot of speed. I practiced as close to game-like conditions as I could self, so that come Sunday, it was all reaction.
Wow.
It was just reaction.
And that's a testament to, how you're remembered as the quarterback you were. And I've seen you touch on, you did a little bit just now, visualization in a previous interview. And so obviously, the reps and the vicious work ethic throughout the work week for an opponent is paramount to getting you prepared. But also, you've heard guys like Russell Wilson talk about it, Kobe, Michael Jordan, and And I'm a huge fan of meditation. I'm actually over 1,000 days in a row. Pretty proud of that. But being able to see in sports plays happen or outcomes positive in your mind before they actually do in the physical world. I know you're a proponent of it. How much do you think the visualization aspect for you, who is one of the most opportunistic quarterbacks in my lifetime that I've seen, was able to use that, harness it, and add it to your sensational work ethic that you would lay? Because obviously we know mental is just as important as physical in these sports.
Absolutely. I think it's huge. And maybe I wasn't a consistent guy in the sense of meditation, but visualization was a huge part of just who I was. And it started early in life. I remember as a child just visualizing, laying in my bed, and that's another form of obviously meditation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they go hand in hand.
Laying in my bed, just visualizing making plays, visualizing doing great things on the field, and maybe not necessarily under the structure of our offensive scheme, but just knowing that I could go out there and I can do it happen. I can be productive. I can help lead this team to a win. I can help lead this team to a championship. It's just a matter of going out there and doing the right thing, making the right plays, being opportunistic, taking advantage of opportunities when they're presented. You can't be late or miss out on the window of opportunity. You've got to be able to strike when that window opens. And so those sort of things for me were a huge part of just my life, and just being able to see that and to visualize it and to feel it, and then to go out there and actually do it.
Wow. And again, you mentioned opportunistic, from taking over for Flutie in the CFL to inheriting a Niners team after Montana and Young. I mean, I still don't think you got the credit you deserved especially in San Francisco, but to be able to have back-to-back 30 touchdown seasons, go to 3 straight Pro Bowls, and most importantly, lead the team to the first NFC West title since 97. I mean, obviously you don't plan on when you roll the Niners as Steve Young to be out for the year, but like you said, you prepared for that moment. So, that moment would have been too big for so many, but you handled it so. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit, looking back on that, what were you most proud of in really the kickoff to your NFL career?
Like you said, I didn't expect Steve to go down so early. Obviously, I thought I'd have the opportunity, much like I did in Canada, to watch Doug Flutie for a year and a half before I actually even stepped onto the field. But with Steve, it was 3-4 games, and all of a sudden he's out, and there I am underneath the bright light, and learning experience in a huge way, because as much as I thought I was prepared, you saw how fast the game was played, and all of a sudden, for me, at one moment, at one time during that first season when I was with the Niners, overwhelmed me. In the sense of, man, I'm not living up to my expectation. Forget what other people expect out of me. I'm not living up to my own expectation. I'm finding myself swimming against the tide here and not going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And it really took a benching for me to take a step back and see that, and maybe remember that this is a team game.
Right.
You can't do it alone. And the 49ers were going through a transition at that time. They had gotten to a point where they just were an old team.
Yeah.
And they needed to be turned over in a lot of ways and resuscitated. And in that first season, 99, we went through some struggles. I got benched, and I saw the other quarterback step on the field, and he struggled just like I was struggling. Nothing really changed. And then all of a sudden, I got put back in a position to really, again, take advantage of the opportunity. And those last 5 starts compared to my first 5 starts were like a whole different quarterback. And I think a lot of that was taking the pressure off of my own shoulders and pushing it away and saying, hey, you can't, as much as you expect perfection out of yourself, you have to understand that you need teammates to help you out. You can't do it all by yourself. And yes, the major change of this team is that Steve Young is no longer the starting quarterback, and there's a new guy, and nobody knows who the hell that guy is. But you also understand that this team is going through a transition, and it's going to take a little time to get it turned around. And that second season, we won a couple more games, but weren't a whole lot better. But our offense was considerably better.
Right.
And that's the year I set a record for most passing yards as a 49er quarterback in a season, and went to my first Pro Bowl. And then the next year, hey, we're 12-4 and we're going to the playoffs.
Yeah, baby.
We got it turned around quickly, but I went through some growing pains. Really tested me mentally as far as my toughness, the thickness of your skin. And we talk about that as professional athletes and especially quarterbacks. You got to be and allow the media or the outside pressures affect who you are and what your role is and what your job is. And so I learned a lot in that first year of going through that roller coaster ride, and it really prepared me for the upcoming seasons and what I needed to be and how I needed to be as a player and a leader for that team.
And speaking of thick skin, Jeff, you obviously you come in inheriting an Eagles offense in 2006. It's coming off a Super Bowl berth. McNabb goes down. Here you are again. The moment's not too big for you. It's not an easy town to play in. We've seen quarterbacks get chewed up and spit out there. For you to come in and again lead the team to a division, I mean, it was unbelievable. And I remember that. I was obviously a little older for that experience, and it was a tremendous run. You know, about what, I guess how everything leading up prepared you for that moment, because that to me, you win the NFC East, and then the following year you win the NFC South. I mean, it was incredible. But again, battle tested, but you come in, you rise to the occasion, and you ball out like you always have.
Yeah, that was such a great experience going to Philly and being on the East Coast and just seeing how those fans are wired, man. It's a completely different experience than West Coast fans. And as much as I appreciated our 49er following and all of that, and I grew up a 49er fan, the East Coast and the NFC East and those Philly fans, they're unbelievable. It's really a love-hate relationship, man. And you could be on cloud nine one week, and then you could be under the ground next. I mean, that's just how it goes. I mean, they're rough and their expectations are high, but I love that. And they're blue collar. And I feel like I related in a lot of ways to that fan base, just in my grind, my effort, my battle, everything that I exemplified was really something that they could relate to. And when I stepped onto that field, that team was 5-5. My first start was in Indianapolis, who that year ended up winning the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. And we struggled in that first game, put up some points, but we couldn't stop Peyton and lost that one. And we returned home 5-6, playing on a Monday night against the Carolina Panthers. And it was a battle.
Oh, yeah.
It was a great game, and they were a good team. And we found a way to pull it out. And I think people or fans started to recognize a little bit about who I was and how I played the game. And I think my teammates saw something about me that they didn't know or hadn't seen up until that point, because they hadn't seen me in that position leading them, and how I stepped into that huddle and how I commanded it and how I battled and how I would take a hit, bounce right back up.
Right.
And it didn't matter. I was going to scratch and claw and fight, find a way to make it happen. And they rallied, man. And that whole team, it was one of the greatest experiences from a camaraderie and from a team just coming together. We went on the road for 3 straight games at the end of that season. That's unheard of in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Generally, you may play 2 games on the road. We played 3 road games back to back to back, all against the NFC East division, all against our rivals. It started in Washington. We go out to Washington. We beat their tail. We go into New York on a Sunday night game, national audience, and beat the Giants in New York. Then we go to Dallas on Christmas Day. It was a Monday. There were 2 games that day. It was a Monday game, and we were the first game that day, and we went into Dallas and beat their ass as well. And to be able to do that 3 consecutive games on the road against the NFC East division and now take a co-lead in the division race. We went back to Philly on a Sunday night game on New Year's Eve, and that crowd was going bananas. They couldn't believe what had happened and what got turned around with that team. All of a sudden, my jersey's up on the Rocky statue.
That's amazing.
It was unbelievable, man. It was like one of the greatest experiences, and even though it was just for one season, man, it was one of those seasons where those fans, I'll always have a special place in the heart of those fans because of how that season went.
Wow. It was a special year. I mean, we all remember it was an unbelievable run. Unbelievable run. And obviously,
we were 3 points away from going on to Chicago, and I think we could have played Chicago pretty tough, which Chicago ended up being New Orleans, but we lost in a tough game down in New Orleans by 3, and it was a battle, man, and it was a hard-fought one. But, hey, it was a great season for our team. And, it led to an opportunity for me to go to Tampa Bay and be the starting quarterback for the Buccaneers and lead them to an NFC South division title.
That chip never left you, Jeff, clearly. I mean, you just kept it on and kept rolling with it. I mean, that, again, 3 division titles. How many quarterbacks have done that?
Yeah, I don't know if many have done it. I don't know if many had to play for as many teams as I had to play for, but and I said it one time when I was being interviewed in Tampa Bay with John Gruden, and he was looking at Brett Favre after we win that NFC South division title.
Yeah.
Brett Favre is becoming a free agent, and he's all of a sudden talking about the possibilities of bringing Brett Favre in there. And, I made a joke about John Gruden doesn't like to marry his quarterbacks. He just likes to date them. But I was kind of like that guy throughout my career. I was almost like everybody was always looking for that next best thing. I was good enough to get you by, but I wasn't the guy that they wanted to go for the full ride with. And, the 49ers learned a lesson after letting me go because of a contract situation. They let me go after that 2003 season.
Right.
They didn't want to pay me what my contract was worth at the time. And it was, 9-10 years before they returned to the playoffs and before they got any sort of consistent play out of a quarterback.
Right.
And those type of things, because I wasn't the prototype, because I wasn't a drafted guy, because I came from the Canadian Football League and through the back door and had to fight for every opportunity, I feel like teams underestimated or maybe underappreciated what I brought to the table. And not just on the field on game day, but what I brought to the locker room. Just how that sense of just battle-tested, that sense of warrior, that attitude that you're going to fight. I mean, and how that spreads fire amongst the rest of the players and leads them to believe in themselves. That was underestimated in me. And that's why I look at the coaching profession today, and having grown up around it with my dad as a football coach, my grandfather was a football coach, I have uncles that were coaches. It was in the blood within me growing up and just being around it. But there's a certain mentality that I bring to the table. And it's almost like the fraternity, the college football and professional football fraternity, coaches fraternity, they don't want to let the ex-players back in. And whatever the reason is, or whatever I'm having to overcome to get my foot back in that door, it's a battle as of right now. But one of these days, it's going to happen.
Well, it has to happen. I mean, look at your career. I mean, Flutie goes down, you come in, you throw for over 500 yards, 6 tugs. Steve Young goes down, you come in, you win the job, 3 Pro Bowls, and an NFC West title. Same thing in Philly, same thing in Tampa. I mean, and again, I'm going back to that speech you gave, listen to the beginning speaker edify you, what your teammates have said about you over the year. Most intense, biggest competitor, a winner, fearless, opportunistic. I mean, riddle me this, Jeff. I'm looking at what Harbaugh's done in a pretty short period of time at the head coaching level, starting at USD, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm looking at his intensity, what he brings to the head coaching position. And I'm saying to myself, I'm sorry, why are there not 7 former quarterbacks that have that ability to evoke enthusiasm and get players to play higher beyond their potential at the head coaching position? Because as far as I'm concerned, like you've alluded to, 17 years playing experience. You grew up with the game. Your father was a head coach. It's embedded in you through in and throughout. And I know you're going to be a great head coach one day. I'm looking at the board. I'm like, well, what are we doing? I'm still grieving with the Charger loss over here. I'll leave that to Red, but to rest. But Anthony Lynn over a Jeff Garcia? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it befuddles me in ways, and I understand, hey, what Harbaugh did, doing some off-season coaching with his dad at, I think it was Western Kentucky when his dad was the head coach there, getting some of that experience, then all of a sudden getting the head job at University of San Diego, doing a good job there, which led him to Stanford and then to the 49ers. But I see a lot of similarities. I mean, obviously, he came out of a coach's background as well.
Right.
Dad being a head football coach. His brother's a coach who was on that Philadelphia staff when I was there. But he's got that intensity. He's got that know-how. He's got that just grit, that fire that just burns inside of him to just elevate the level of people around him.
Exactly.
And he also understands how to let coaches coach. He creates the culture. He creates the attitude. He builds upon that. He brings the motivation. He brings the fire, the intensity, the competitiveness. And he allows his coaches to then fuel that and feed that to the players. And he oversees it all. And he cracks the whip when he needs to crack the whip. And he puts an arm around guys when he needs to hug guys.
Right.
But at the end of the day, there's a mutual respect and there's a want to battle for each other, to climb that mountain together. And, one of these days it will happen. Hey, it might have to happen at the high school level this year. It might have to be one of those type of situations, but it's going to happen. It's in my blood. It's what I love. It's what I know. And at some point, I'm going to get through that crack, just like I did as a quarterback, getting into the league. And once I'm in there, hey, they're not going to deny me anymore.
There's no way. I'm fired up for you. And honestly, I think the way you've attacked your life, this is just another challenge. And not that you wouldn't want it any other way. It'd be great to, get a call from one of these teams with a head coaching vacancy and say, hey, Jeff, want to come on board? But I mean, I think obviously, like you said, going a route where you're going to prove more people wrong, it just fires you up. It gets you going. And I'm fired up for you.
Yeah, it's hard not to want to be respected for the time that I put in.
Right.
And so for me, it's hard to say, okay, I'm going to accept a quality control job and start from the ground and work my way all the way back up to the top. I want people to recognize that there's 17 years of quality experience and also the fact that I grew up around the game. That, in a sense, should provide an opportunity to be a quarterback coach.
Without question.
Somewhere.
Without question.
At some point. Because the knowledge and the experience that I bring to the table is unlike a lot of guys out there who coach the position. And the crazy thing about it to me, and people want to knock my coaching experience, go through the NFL quarterback coaches list and see how many of those guys never even played quarterback.
That's what I'm saying.
About the most important position on the field, and you got a guy coaching that position who's never played that position. That to me that's
a no-brainer.
An injustice.
It's an injustice, and it's a no-brainer. I mean, again, it's the most important position on the field. You could argue in all of sports, and it's being coached by guys that never picked up a rock and did a 5-step drop. I don't know. I mean, again, I know it's going to happen for you. So I'm fired up. Just, obviously got to stay patient. That's not an easy thing to do because you're ready to roll. But hey, I know you got a couple of sons and some kids. You can stay, stay in that coaching mindset day in, day out. You got them playing sports. So keeps you sharp.
Hey, I'm blessed. I'm fortunate that career that I had, I'm not seeking a paycheck. I've been
Right.
fortunate in that sort of way.
Right.
I'm doing it because I love to do it and because I have what I feel is a gift to offer and to bring to the table. But until that time comes, I have 4 beautiful children that, hey, I'm raising and being a part of their lives and being a dad and trying to help them understand what some work ethic and what some drive and commitment means and those sort of things.
Absolutely.
Like you said earlier in our talk, I mean, today's world, especially the youth of today, they're all a self-publicized superstar. Nobody understands. They don't understand what it really means to have a work ethic and have a drive and a commitment to something.
Right.
And, and I think that's the important thing that I just want to, and that's why I can't just sit here and be just dad. There's got to be more to what I offer society because that's just how I've been driven my entire life.
Well, you're a servant leader, and going off of that, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the foundation and incredible work you and your wife have done with the Jeff Garcia Pass It On Foundation, obviously helping provide resources for people who are less fortunate. Being able to be in a position like you are and have been for so many years and to give back obviously feels great on multiple levels. But when you started that and over the years it's grown, I mean, how has the impact felt for you? Because you've given so much, but what is the biggest gift in receiving when you start a foundation like you have with your wife?
Yeah, I wish we could say that our foundation was still alive and thriving. It was really something that we really built up during my playing days. And
Right.
then all of a sudden, hey, kids started to come along. And next thing you know, we were changing diapers and losing sleep at night and trying to figure out how to raise children.
4 kids, man. That's like a no-huddle offense right there. 4 wide.
During the time when we had our foundation going, I mean, it was such an honor. I mean, we have a platform as professional athletes to really rally people and bring people together to support different causes, and to be able to go out and do that, whether it was raising money for cancer awareness, cancer research, or going and raising money for youth programs and giving kids in troubled areas or backgrounds that just didn't have as much, giving them opportunities and resources to do better things with their own lives, to be able to do those sort of things and to put smiles on people's faces and to give back and to show that that you care, and being half Mexican, I was involved with a Hispanic Scholarship Fund for a number of years.
Right.
A great organization where we raised a ton of money for high school students to go on to college, have a chance to go on to college. Many of those kids being the first to ever go to college in their family.
It's amazing.
And to be able to help those young people do those sort of things and to chase down their dreams and their goals, just like I was able to do, that's more fulfilling than anything. And, I still look at life today as like, okay, yes, I get caught up in my world of being a dad and wanting to coach and those sort of things, but there's more to life than that. How can I get back to giving? How can I be a greater giver in life and teach my children the value of giving back and helping those in need and less fortunate, or just helping to put a smile on people's faces in some sort of way? And, I know we get self-consumed in so many ways, but that's an emphasis of my life that I want to continue to grow and continue to be a part of and demonstrate, especially when I'm raising young children, the importance of being able to give back to society.
Without question. And I know, Jeff, you're a busy man, so I'll get you out of here. I did have one more question. I love asking athletes what the game taught them in regards to life lessons. What was there one? You don't have to go into it too much, but was there a lesson or two that the game of football has taught you that's invaluable, that you not only have instilled in your life, but are passing on to your children?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many lessons that just sports in general, I think, teach us. But just being involved in football throughout my life, I mean, the ability to work with a team, the ability to have a responsibility and to be accountable to to that responsibility.
Right.
Knowing that you have to put work and drive and commitment into something in order to accomplish a goal. It's not just going to arrive. It's not just going to show up. You have to dedicate yourself to your craft in bettering yourself on a daily basis,
right,
in order to achieve the greatest of achievements. And not all of us can get out there and win a Super Bowl. That's a tough trophy to get your hands on.
Oh yeah.
And, those who have done it multiple times, more power to them. They've been able to crack the code, so to speak, like a Belichick and a Tom Brady. But that being said, we all strive to be the best that we can be. And in order to be a champion, you need to be dedicated to your craft, and you need to be able to bring it together as a team. And those sort of things have taught me so many great values as to how to live life and how to build a team around me, or create a team-type atmosphere and environment, and how that team needs to work together in order to be productive. And, there's no better place in to learn life lessons than it is in sports. That's why my kids are all involved in it.
It's beautifully said. Jeff, thank you so much for the time, man. Incredible with your words. You're an inspiration, a phenomenal athlete, even better person. I know I just met you, but again, hey, and I will say happy belated. I know I couldn't believe I met you and I asked you for an interview on your birthday and he gave it to me. If that doesn't say more about who he is as a person.
You got it, Alex. Hey, great talking to you and all the best, man.
All right, Jeff. Thank you so much, man.